President Byrne.
Here.
Trustees Hebda.
Here.
Schultz.
Here.
Markwart.
Here.
Cook.
Here.
Oppenheim.
Here.
Takaoka.
Here.
We have a quorum present. Would everybody please stand for the pledge? Do we have the press here? No. They're hidden behind a tree? Okay. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Any citizens that wish to address the board tonight on any matter other than what's on committee of the whole, because on committee of the whole, I'll recognize you, Chet. So you can't do it now. But I know you're here. Okay, so in essence, all right. Anybody else? Okay. First report is from Chief of Police.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll keep it real brief. Just wanted to invite the community to participate in the Marine Corps Reserve Toys for Tot collection. We have boxes throughout the village. Police department lobbies open 24/7. Easy time for people to come in and drop kids off to those that are less fortunate. The deadline to make those donations of unwrapped new toys is December 14th.
Okay. And I just want to bring up that our next meeting will be December 12th. Village board meeting on December 12th. Not on the 5th. You know what? Trustee Cook.
Yeah, Chief, in addition to the Toys for Tots, are you still doing the coats for vets, or?
Yes, we did, and but we delivered those
You did,
this
okay.
weekend.
Okay, all right, just wanted to check, thanks.
Okay. Next is Public Works Director, Village Engineer Brown.
Thank you very much. In your board packet is the information for the Watershed Development Ordinance recertification. Our village is in good standing with the Stormwater Management Commission. Recertification is necessary every 5 years. They require documentation to prove of our status. So the paperwork is included in the board packet. Really what we're asking the board is to approve this resolution so we can move forward and we can review development in-house rather than having the county perform that work for us. So staff recommends approval of the resolution.
And you're going to get,
And it's
you're
on the-
going to get certified?
Excuse me. So resolution 2017-073, it's on the consent agenda.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Next is the snow and ice control plant. El Nino, right?
Yes.
La? Oh, la. And then it's El Nino. Thank you. I appreciate
Yes.
it. I appreciate it.
So also included in your board packet is our snow plan and policy. So we wanted to make sure that the board was aware of the changes. We're looking for the board to adopt this policy. It's essentially the same policy we've used over the last 5 years. Specifically, there's been some changes. The Lashin Center, in a month, the Lashin Center will no longer have tenants, so there's some changes required as far as service to that area. The Park District will no longer be plowing that, so Public Works will be doing that. So that's one item. There's other items included. Changes in some of the contracts, not the cul-de-sacs, but some of the HOA related work. We work with their new contractor at Baytree. Whoever their contractor is, we like to talk to them if they can do it at the same price as we can. We try to hire them because the choreography works better. We know who's getting in when, and we think it provides better service. Other than that, it's a lot of changes in terms of new staffing.
Who's the contractor?
Paracone.
Okay.
Paracone Brothers. And then we've added a section for emergency contractors. So should we get substantially more snow than we did last year, we will end up being able to go to this reference document, and we have phone numbers available, equipment, and we can call them and call in the reinforcements as needed.
What do all our experts say about this winter?
I rarely listen to the experts. I read them, I hear predictions, but as I always say, a public works director looks at snow different than others. What I would love to have Tom Skilling and others tell me is when specifically the snow is going to fall. Is it after work hours? Is it on weekends? Is it coming all in one volume? Is it sporadic? Those are things that are important to public works director
Right.
as far as providing that service.
Yeah, and we have though, some kind of program that pinpoints like right here.
Yes, we have a number of technologies similar to what people may have on their smartphones, like a weather bug. But this is a DTN service. It gives us more data, temperatures. You know, what's the road conditions, the temperatures of the road. We can predict whether or not it's going to be a icier condition. Is it a drier snow that's more powder? And we would approach it in different manners.
What do we use on these pavers out here to, to salt that for ice control?
Rock salt for the pavers.
That tears it up pretty good?
It's a cement product, and salt and cement don't cooperate with one
Because the
another.
pavers are really made out of cement.
They are.
Okay.
They are.
Can't stay up late worrying about that one,
We won't.
huh? Okay, anything else, Dave?
So we just wanted concurrence from the board that this policy is the one that we'll be using for this coming winter. Real quick, in terms of one thing that you will want to know is in terms of the salt, we have all 3 of our bins full, so that's 1,200 tons of salt. Last year was so mild, so we have about 760 tons that we didn't use last year that we have to use. So when you see our budget request, when I go through my operating budget, previously we would ask for twice the amount of salt that we're asking for this year. So there is some positive to that.
Trustee Hepda,
Just a
excuse me.
couple of things, Dave. If we could remind our residents when it does snow that they not plow after the plows have gone through to plow their driveway snow out into the street. If there's a way to maybe embellish on that in the newsletter, that would be great, as well as the landscape companies too, because I know that becomes a dangerous hazard as that builds up, but I know people don't want to pile it on either side, but it doesn't make it's not good for those driving down the streets. People tend to plow their snow out into the street, and they should kind of be aware of that, as well as hopefully they could take care of maybe cleaning their sidewalks, especially for those walking to and from the train station. I know we try to take care of that, and some of the kids walking back and forth to school. So if we can do something, Lynn, maybe in our Village Voice, that would be great. I'd appreciate it.
Appreciate the comments. We'll work together and get that done.
Super, thank you.
Trustee Schultz.
How many new drivers do we have this year?
Ones
Our
that,
germane point is, I know we've got some trouble spots in Deer Path. There's a couple of kind of dead-end deals that we have to kind of pull the snow back. And then we've got eyebrows and cul-de-sacs that we've kind of established a plan for attacking them. I just want to make sure that everybody is fully trained in all these little nuances so that the phone doesn't ring off the hook after the first snowstorm.
so the majority of our team is still here. We probably have 5 new drivers into the program. And when we switch shifts, that's the training that we need to provide, because there are nuances on how people prefer their specific areas. So we have a strategy on that, and then there's specific areas that we have to look at, and so we'll tend to that.
Okay, as long as that's on your things to do list.
Okay.
Okay, no windrolls. Okay, I always liked that one. Okay, anything else? No, good. All right, next is omnibus vote agenda. Is there a motion to approve items A through L?
So made.
Second.
Motion is second. Any comments or questions? Does anybody want to pull anything? If not, roll call.
Trustee Schultz.
Aye.
Markwart.
Aye.
Cook.
Aye.
Oppenheim.
Aye.
Takaoka.
Aye.
Hebda.
Aye.
Motion carries. Okay. Unfinished additional business, approval of the village board meeting minutes of November 7th, 2017.
Motion to approve?
Second.
Motion is second. Comments, questions, deletions, corrections? If not, roll call.
Trustees Markwart.
Aye.
Cook.
Aye.
Oppenheim.
Aye.
Takaoka.
Aye.
Hebda.
Aye.
Schultz.
Aye.
Motion carries. Are we going into closed session? No. Okay, is there a motion to adjourn the village? Oh, I'm sorry. Schultz?
Yeah, I just wanted to provide a shout out, so to speak, to the Public Works Department. I don't know how well the cameras look out the window here, but this is quite the winter wonderland, and the other locations in town, they've really done a nice job with what you've done to date. And just wanted to make everybody aware that we have all of our decorations out, and we have the website, I believe, right, where we identify them, or you can take a self-guided tour of all the local lights and decorations throughout town.
The self-guided tour is in the works. The lighting is up, and it's remarkable how many residents have their lights out also. It's really looking good.
Did you put Shrek up?
No.
I'm not sure if we did.
Yeah, we don't have them anymore?
I don't.
Okay.
It's a cutout.
Trustee Hebda.
I also want to thank Dave and his staff for doing that. I just have a thought. When we come down Route 21 to the corner of 45 where Philly G's used to be, that was a really nice decorated area. If we've got any extras that we could put around there, Dave, I know that was very dark. So I was wondering if there's a possibility, because that house was usually always lit up and now it's really dark and
Yeah,
barren.
let us do another outreach with the new owner.
Okay.
Last
be
time we had conversations, they weren't as interested. Let's see if we can encourage them.
And then, just so this board is aware, I've asked Mike to look into the beer market sign. It's a real eyesore. I'm
What's
sorry.
a new one?
It's a new one. So he's going to try and do something to tone it down. So it's bad. And then I've also asked him, the lights around the mall ring road, it's so dark by Penny's and by Marshall Fields. It's really, really dark. So we're going to see what we can do to brighten that spot up just a little bit. So,
Does that
so
mean turn on the
lights. So
Turn on the lights in the
something.
parking lot?
So, I mean, I don't know what they do, but it seems like on 60, we've got all these other places with their lights on, and it's
Yeah.
really, really dark around the ring road. So
We'll reach out to them all and
thank
follow up
you.
on that.
But anything you can do to the beer market would be appreciative.
Yeah, that sign
do.
dominates that corner.
It does. It just, wow. It's
Okay, and I'd certainly like to thank the Countryside Fire Protection District for delivering Santa Claus in a timely fashion on Saturday for the tree lighting and menorah lighting ceremony. And I'd also like to thank Public Works for a great job. They did decorating the golf course, and, you know, having that golfer there is so special. You watch the little ball, you know.
However,
This
I
guy,
do want
this
to.
guy makes a shot every time.
No, no, that's the
misses
thing,
it?
no, and I said to one of your guys, that I didn't like him because he made every shot, and he said no, that they had found out this year a way to reset the system on that, and he only makes one out of every three now. So I
Really?
feel much better, yes.
So where does the ball go?
Well, the first one comes up short, the second one hits the flag and comes back, and the third one
Oh,
goes
it
in.
hits the flag.
Yeah, and the third one goes in.
Well, I'll.
So now I
study-
feel better.
I'll be forced to study that some night.
Feel good because
Okay.
But I would have known it if one of your guys hadn't said, no, no, look, and showed me. I love it.
Very nice. I'd take hitting the flag personally. Okay, all right, so, okay, any other new business to come before the board? If not, is there a motion to adjourn? The board meeting go into committee of the whole.
So made.
second,
Motion is second, roll call.
Trustees Cook,
Aye.
Oppenheim,
aye.
Takaoka,
Aye.
Hebda,
Aye.
Schultz,
Aye.
Markle.
Aye.
Motion carries. Okay. Committee of the whole, is there a motion to approve committee of the whole meeting minutes of November 7th, 2017?
Motion to approve?
Second?
Any comments, questions, corrections, or deletions? Excuse me, if not, roll call.
Trustees Oppenheim,
Aye.
Takaoka,
Aye.
Hebda,
Aye.
Schultz,
Aye.
Markwart,
Aye.
Cook.
Aye.
Motion carries. Okay, number 2, Bradford Real Estate Aldi's.
Oh, he's going to the bathroom. All these, all these.
Thank you, Your Honor. So representatives from Bradford and all these are appeared before the Planning and Zoning Commission on October 4th to request approval to construct a grocery store on Lot 4 of the Shops of Greg's Landing North. They requested approval of a special use to amend the planned unit development, as well as to amend the plat of subdivision, and we're seeking site, landscaping, and architectural elevation approvals. The commission voted 6-0 to approve the special use permit and the plat of subdivision. However, on a 3-3 vote, the motion to approve the site and landscaping plan failed. This failure was due to concerns involving the internal circulation of the traffic within the site, as well as location of the access to the Menards Drive. Since that meeting on October 4th, village staff has met with representatives of Bradford and Aldi's a number of times to work through the site plan and come up to what the proposal you see tonight that staff thinks will accommodate and really be a great way to meld the two lots together and will be a great asset to the community. What the new plan shows is, and you can see it on the screen in front of you, is they're re-subdividing the lot and increasing the amount of lot they're taking, which is lot 5, by additional 0.4 acres. The initial lot 4 is 7.76 acres. The new lot 5, which is the Aldi's lot, will be 2.29 acres, which will leave the remaining lot 4 at 5.47 acres. And 3 acres of that is detention, but that still leaves almost 2.5 acres of developable land. The Cuneo Trust owns lot 4. They've not yet determined what future development will take place north of the proposed Aldi's, but it was really important from the staff perspective that the access be able to accommodate both the current proposed development and the future development. And that's why you see this northern access to Menards Drive being located farther to the north than what was previously proposed. They've also removed diagonal parking spaces and included perpendicular parking, which allows 2 lanes of traffic in all areas within the site. They've also created a bit of a more designated area for truck delivery access, which will be located right here. We have added a condition of approval that restricts delivery trucks from utilizing the Menards Drive to back into the site. Instead, they'll have to pull into the parking lot and then back in. This will help alleviate congestion that may be developed, especially as future lots are developed and we see Menards and other businesses open up. Another thing you'll note is that striping has been added on Menards Drive. That is something that Aldi's agreed to do, which will accommodate left turn movement into the proposed Lot 5, and it also will accommodate a left turn movement into the future Lot 3. And so this will be also another addition to help mitigate any future traffic concerns that we may have. The parking they are proposing on the site is at 95 spaces, which no variation is required. A total of 77 spaces is required by code. There are a number of signage variations that they are requesting on the north, east, and west elevations. These relate to the amount of square footage they're allowed to have on each sign, and that really relates to, here we go. This screen here you can see as another variation is related to logos, which is greater than 4 square feet. Staff is comfortable with the proposed sign variations. We do think it architecturally meets the proposed elevations that they have. Another thing of note on the architecture is that, especially as it relates to what was seen at the concept level stage, they've really totally revamped their architecture to make it unique. They've added brick veneer, wood cedar, cement panels, and metal finishing, which really adds a unique character to it that they have not yet previously proposed to any other Aldi's store. With that, I know the residents provided some feedback to the board members on that as it relates to construction traffic and those items. The conditions of approval that were added that are in your packet are generally consistent with the proposed Menards development to making sure the lot's consistent. A few items of note, we are going to require that lots 4 and 5, again, that's the Aldi's lot and the future development to the north, that shared parking be required for those two uses. This is consistent with how we had Chase Bank and Menards requiring shared parking to make sure that overflow parking doesn't become an issue between particular uses. We've also asked the petitioners to consider the addition of more Colorado spruce to the landscape plan. That is to accommodate some requests that we received by residents who attended the initial commission meeting. Another architectural feature we added was at the commission level was raising the height of the parapet wall along the building elevation. This is done to screen the rooftop units. There was a previous proposal that had they had a lower parapet wall and then the individual rooftop units screened. The commission felt that aesthetically it looked better with a raised parapet wall, and that was something that was requested as well by residents who attended the meeting. With that, if the committee of the whole feels the request is appropriate, it is recommended that staff be directed to prepare the necessary ordinance granting approval of the following. Approval of a special use permit to amend the planned unit development to allow for certain site plan changes along with the sign departures that were addressed previously, as well as preliminary approval to amend the plat of subdivision, preliminary and final site and landscaping plan approvals, preliminary and final approval of architectural elevations, and that these approvals would be subject to compliance with the departures and conditions of approvals listed herein and discussed today. One small item of note is we will be revising the plat of subdivision just to accommodate the additional 0.4 acres that they will need to purchase in order to accommodate the access drive to the site. With that, the petitioners are here to answer any questions. That's it.
Questions from the board?
Do we have a finishes panel here?
You want me to pass the samples or just put the board up?
Just put the board up.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Tom Howell with Aldi Foods, Director of Real Estate. And here we have the sample board, and then we actually have a color rendering, a 3D rendering of the elevations that come out a lot clearer than the actual two-dimensional drawings that are in your guys' packet. And I can pass these around as well, get a closer look. And the brick pattern itself, I didn't attach it to the board because I've had past situations with brick attached to poster board in the past at public meetings. So I can answer questions about the material for you tonight as well.
That's what I was interested in, was the brick. So that's number one for the drawing. Which is number one?
For number one for the drawing,
Yeah,
so in regards to.
basically the mass, yeah. Yeah,
Here's the actual brick.
Might get the mic, the hand out.
handheld.
Sure.
It's a game show, pretend.
I should know what I'm doing. This isn't my first rodeo here. So in regards to the brick material, which is in this position of the building,
Yeah.
which is the contrast of colors here, and we went with the lighter tone of the brick to complement the different tones of brick.
Which of
in the
those
building.
bricks is that?
On the actual building itself, it would be the mix here on the cart corral. And then also on the long and short walls, and I have the 3D renderings of all sides of the building that I can
So
show you.
It's a random mix, it's not.
It's a random mix, it's not one solid color. So it goes from different tones and earthy tones that match and complement a lot of the other colors in the surrounding market, which was something that we had brought up from our previous
Got a real
meetings.
picture of anything?
Yes,
A real one?
an actual,
Yeah, you know, like a blown up picture of a building that you did this in.
well, we've never done this building in any Aldi. This would be the first of its kind.
Okay.
I've got the actual 3D renderings of all sides of the building that I can show you to help illustrate the color pattern. So you can get a better look and feel of the material. So if you'd like to see the brick pattern, there are darker tones, as you can see in the sample, that aren't coming up in the drawing, but it is a mix of different color patterns, and it's not one solid color.
Here, go ahead, take a look.
Yep, you
Look,
can
see.
pass that out if you want.
Definitely doesn't look like an Aldi.
I can go through the rest of the material here as you guys are taking a look at that drawing. It's a little bit of a closer view. But with our brick material here, which is a cement brick, and then this is a hickory Nichiha panel. So this is what this is right here. And I can take these off for you as well.
No, I've seen, well, I'm good. I saw what I need.
So here's the Nichiha panels if you guys would like to, no problem. So this is the mix that would go with the brick pattern that we see here. So we'd have a break in the brick pattern with a Nichi. No, it's a cement, it's an actual cementitious wood panel, and I'm not sure if it's actually concrete material or not. That's the actual piece right there. That is the actual piece of material.
This isn't cement.
It's a hardy plank board, so it's a cement-based board.
It's a cementatious product.
Sure. Yeah, it's something that's new for us, and it's a very good, durable material that comes across very well, and it's got clean lines. It actually attaches very well from all of our construction that we've worked with so far and our vendors that we've worked with. This is actually the actual metal panels, the lead coat seam metal, and then we've got the composite panels behind the actual tower elevations, which is aluminum composite panels, additional glazing throughout the building, the cowl wall, which is actually backlit.
Because you gotta do any staining?
No,
No.
this is how the material come in, and there are no painting of any of the materials.
Now, with that material there, it doesn't go through the whole product, right?
It doesn't go through what?
Oh, it isn't the brown color dyed into the concrete thing. In other words, see the back spray?
Yes,
Okay, that's the way it's gonna go on the building, or is it more,
that's the way it's going to go in the building.
and is that the exact thickness?
Yes, that is an exact piece of the board.
And the brick is what kind of brick?
It's a spec brick, which is a cement brick, and this is the actual brick material.
And again, is it this thick, or is it?
It's not, it's a full-size brick, so it's going to be the depth of, if it's 2 inches thick or 4 inches thick, I'm not sure what the actual spec is, but it is a full brick. It's not a fake veneer or panel.
It's not is it a true utility brick, which is bigger?
It should be the 8-inch wide brick. So it's not your standard, queen size or St. Simon size.
He's saying that.
Mike, isn't there a difference in size between the brick side of your house potentially and a utility brick kind of building?
Yeah, utility brick, well, the depth in all likelihood is 3.5 inches. That's the most common depth of the brick. And then a utility brick, or something that's used more commonly for commercial application, is at least 8 inches wide. And it has a 4-inch height to it. My guess is that's what's being proposed here. I'll let you answer.
Well, I'm just bringing it up because I don't know if that's.
Well, I know it's not, no, it's not a veneer. That's been made clear, and we, yeah.
Okay. All right.
But-
Well, I have several concerns. One I want to address early. Are you done with the
Yeah,
buildings?
that
Okay. In looking at the parking lot, those first 4 parking spaces as you come into the right, that's an accident looking for a place to happen. I'm not a traffic engineer, but they're less than 30 feet from the roadway. So you're not going to get more than 1 car off the roadway before they would have to stop for somebody backing up coming out of there. I mean, they're just that's a serious hazard. So those 4, I would say, have to go. Did your engineers or that look at that? I mean, because a car in that first space would have to actually back around right into the incoming traffic.
With Pinnacle Engineering Group, civil engineer for the project.
This one?
This is definitely something that's been considered, and if you recall when we were here several months ago, this whole entrance magazine has been reconfigured. Granted, yes, there are 4 parking stalls here, and they are, approximately 30 or so feet away from the road, but, I mean, I don't see too much of a concern, to be honest.
You don't see a concern to a car backing out of that slot and using up half of that incoming space with traffic coming in? Really?
We can certainly look at it, but, this is a common thing, to be honest.
Coming off of a roadway like you're coming off of, that heavily traveled, boy, I don't know that I've ever seen a parking space that close to a main.
This is Milwaukee.
And we've talked about this before when we were planning commission, that we could.
You gotta get closer to the mic.
We can actually designate those as employee parking if you would prefer, and then that way the employees are parking there.
No, I'd prefer they're gone.
I agree with trustee Cook.
Dave,
You want to knock these out?
speak to this.
Correct. That makes sense. Yeah, you're right. No, you're
What's really driving the design of the whole parking lot is where the loading dock is. And so getting trucks in and out is really how the driveway was set up. In terms of those 4 parking spots, definitely not ideal. I don't know in terms of the parking count and where they're at with the parking count, but I suspect it's very, very tight. And so I think that's why they're proposing those 4 spots.
The number I had showed 95, which is above the minimum of 77 required. This would bring you down to 91 by eliminating those, if your numbers are right. I didn't count them all.
Yeah, the actual site plan does have 95 parking stalls, and our minimum requirement for an Aldi location to be an approved site we need 95 stalls. That is our minimum requirement. And the changes and modifications that we've made were to maintain that 95 parking stalls. And we actually lost parking stalls with adjusting the building and making the changes we did to make the architectural features that we did. So we actually went down further from there.
And
now
you
we're-
contacted your liability attorney about this? Because, boy, I just see that being an accident looking for a place to happen.
We don't pursue and try to construct or design or engineer
With
unsafe
safety in
parking
mind.
lots. Correct.
Okay.
You know, accidents can happen, accidents will happen, and you're never gonna have a perfect scenario, and we don't wanna design something that's not safe for the public. We didn't have that in mind with that, and with the amount of distance there is, I believe it was over,
Yeah, it's
About 25 to
it's
27
about
feet.
25 to 30 feet.
Yeah.
Again, they're going to be turning in there, you know,
And a car backing out of there.
15
takes
miles
up
an
half
hour.
that- A car backing out of there takes up half of that 25-foot stacking bay coming in. So you've got a car turning in who has to stop within 15 feet because of a car backing out.
if we were to remove one of the stalls there and add an additional 10 feet of clearance, is that something that would be something?
No, it really kind of affects all four of them. They're all backing out into the incoming traffic.
Well, okay, the
mean,
truck
really, you wanna think
only lane is right there, right? The original.
Correct.
Okay. So, well, the trucks would go in there. So literally, when
here.
people turn in from the street, what are we calling this street?
The
Menards Drive.
Whatever. Okay, but in essence, you got, so that's where all the traffic is directed to go park, correct? So you not only have those spots, you got every spot in there. You know, people back in. You know, I traffic aisles all the time. I personally, I try to
can't-
pull straight in, so I
you
can
can't- you
just go
cannot-
straight out.
I mean,
Just
this is
backing out of a
how-
parking lot in a grocery
You
store.
cannot even
You gotta avoid people,
turn
you gotta avoid the
around.
cars, you gotta avoid the kids, it's like out of
technically,
control,
if you came in,
But in
this is the
essence,
only way out. If you
all
went
these,
like
all
down
the
here,
cars that are coming in, and
there
Dave, you
is
should correct me
no
if I'm wrong,
place.
but they're all gonna
You have to come
circulate
back out.
somehow,
there's nothing
you
comes
know,
around.
past these 4 spots, then there's another 10, you know what I mean?
Right.
So all these spots here, Tom, are gonna be backing out into that lane.
Correct.
No,
And
no,
I
no,
mean,
no, no,
they-
no, 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 no.
Yeah,
But,
sure
but
they are.
hang,
Close at the entrance.
They're there,
that isn't what that is not what I said.
okay.
Please don't rephrase what I said. They are within, a car backing out of those 4 is backing directly into the inbound lane, far too close to make it safe. It's why IDOT doesn't like putting traffic signals too close together. You gotta have room for, you only have room for maybe one car to come off of that roadway if somebody's backing out of one of those 4 spots. That's it, maybe one. And they're gonna be coming around that corner and having to come to a dead stop because somebody's backing out. It's just, they're too close to the entrance. The rest of them, I have no problem with any of the rest of them.
I would like to add to Tom's comment. If I understand, when they do a delivery, the truck is going to come in and back into that spot that they have, which would then be going past those 4 spots too. So it may be a little on the tight side. So I'd have to honestly agree. You've got a truck coming in that's backing out, or backing in. It's fine that he's going to be backing out, he can see it, but when he's backing in, you're going to be right in that front entrance area, and anybody in any of those 4 spots there, it's a little tight. I don't know if we have a post.
In regards to our deliveries, I can speak on behalf of that. So we anticipate to have 8 to 10 semi deliveries each week. And that would be our own deliveries of our own groceries, our milk deliveries, and then wine and beer in regards to that. That's a separate item, whether it's a full truck or not, and Coca-Cola. So the mix of all those different deliveries, our ideal times for delivery are not during business hours. So, if we're talking about, once a day, and that's not going to have a significant impact in regards to circulation of traffic, and we don't prefer to have those deliveries during peak hours. Now, is there going to be the one-off situation? Sure, that's always going to happen, and any retailer that tells you they can control every single truck.
No, and I agree with what you said, that's why I didn't bring that up.
And the 4
truck
parking
doesn't
stalls that we're bringing up are an item that are a deal point for us, because it makes us have a valid site for us to pursue. Now, those 4 parking stalls, yes, are at the far end of the actual parking lot itself, and are not the ideal situation for anybody to park, because they are the furthest distance away from people buying the groceries and going in and out for retail services. So it's the last resort parking stall after they go towards the front doors, because as most people that shop, there's very few people that go to look for the far distant location versus the people that try to park as close as possible. So that's just one.
Well, have you actually allowed for your employees to park in this lot?
Yeah, we always have our employees park in
All
all
right,
the
well-
lots. And we can designate those as employee parking stalls, and we can make sure that those are areas that our morning employees park in. We know our employees take their time when they drive in and out of our lots. They take a lot of pride in our parking lots. I mean, they're not going to be in a rush or try to cause disruption. So if we were actually to designate those as employee parking stalls, that's something that we did bring up at Plan Commission that we can explore, and that's a simple signage solution for that area. And if there's overflow to where we're that busy and we have 91 stalls full and someone's circulating to try to find that last spot and one of the employees happens to leave and a customer takes it, it does complement to allow that person to go park there. It's not like they're not going to park there. But also, we're thinking about the future to the north as well, as Lot 4. Now, we're trying to protect ourselves because as a retailer, we're unsure of how the land will develop to the north. But if there's something that comes up with the future development to the north, I mean, that's the other thing is that we have agreed to share the parking with that future user. That's something typically we don't concede on that we brought up in our May meeting. So that's just another item to take into consideration is that we are proposing to have shared parking and to allow cross-access and complement a retail use for the overall development of Lot 4 when that does occur, but we don't know what that future user will be as well.
Trustee Schultz.
My concern is the same as trustee Cook's, and to that end, make those 4 spots go away and bring that, and if you need to buy more land with Lot 4 to develop across from the island that's currently there, do it. But as far as I'm concerned, you meet the requirements, make those 4 spots go away.
And if Matt can actually maybe discuss, because I'm talking with
Sir, if we can help. To try to address this concern, potentially they lose 2 parking spots, if that's acceptable. Let's talk through that. You want to eliminate those 4 stalls. How do you do that? You can move where the.
Too horizontal, no, that doesn't work either, because
I'm not-
that's your main traffic aisle there.
That's not what I'm saying.
Okay.
Where there is that main two-way traffic between, the drive aisles, shift that over 2 spaces. Eliminate the 2 spaces, 2 additional parking spaces. So where the access point is, that moves over 2 spaces. We don't lose any parking there. And as we shifted it over those 2 spaces, we eliminate those other 2.
Okay.
Instead of 4, we're eliminating these 2.
Sure.
These other 2, everything shifts over potential. I don't know if you can lose 2 spaces.
I mean, ultimately, for us to be able to lose 2 spaces and work with staff, we're going to have staff review and approval for certain items as we continue on. And that's something that I can take back. If we're talking about losing 2 stalls and taking that back to committee for review, I don't see it being a deal point to kill the deal, but it's not a decision that I can make here tonight because that's something that's not my authority. But for us to take that and to make those adjustments and add that stacking and provide even a safer arrangement and stacking.
Losing 2 buys you at least another whole car length,
Right.
which adds to potential safety.
We're definitely here when we've been willing and working with you guys, and if you guys deem it to be something that we want to consider to change and revise, we definitely will do that.
Okay, so technically, the 2 spaces would be the 2 spaces closest to the truck lane, truck delivery lane.
Yep.
No?
Yeah.
Okay, and then the 2 spaces that would remain, are you moving any of these islands, Dave?
Yeah.
So both of those islands where the driveway is, it's shifting over 2 parking stalls.
Yeah.
So therefore, those stalls can be to the east side, and the only elimination of the stalls are those 2 remaining ones on the north
What,
side.
I mean, since this drawing doesn't have it on here, what's the width of this aisle to start with? What is it? 25. Oh, yeah, Jesus Christ, okay. Pardon my French there. Okay, 25. So that'll remain 25 feet.
It just shifts to the left. 20 feet,
Yeah, okay.
or 16 feet.
Maybe designate those
8 feet. 18 feet.
We
But
can- we
you're
can still label-
eliminating,
We'd be willing to, we could be willing to label those as employee parking as well.
I'm not even looking.
That's perfectly fine.
okay. Trustee Appen.
I mean, Dave's got the pointer, if you want to point it out, Dave.
I think we get it.
All right.
How many employees do you have at the store at any given time?
It could range from 4 to 6 different employees. you
Yeah,
know,
I didn't think
depending
there were
on the-
too many, so.
What's that?
Yeah, I didn't think there were too many at the store, so it's not as though you're taking up that whole row
What
of
was the answer?
4 to 6.
4 to 6 at the highest peak sales volume hours of where we'd have.
You got more people in there when you're stacking the shelves at night?
Well, less, but we don't actually night stock.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
They stock during the day.
A typical Aldi day for employee, a lot of employees will start at 6 a.m. They'll work from 6 to 2 or 6 to noon. We have a midday shift, maybe a 10 to 4, and then we have night closing shifts, maybe a 3 to 9. But we operate from 9 to 8 p.m. each day. And our typical employee range for hours of operation from 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. But usually, once the employees and everybody becomes so efficient, they're out of there by 9 o'clock at night. We're a lean, mean machine. We're pretty proud of the employees that we have, but yeah, they're rock stars. I mean, it's amazing how much they can get done.
Yeah, that's
Can-
great.
Can I ask about
Yeah, sure.
the trucks once again? So, could you go over how many of those are, of the trucks that you mentioned are yours versus other trucks?
So milk would come at least 2 to 3 times a week, depending on the schedule and the volume of sales. And then for our own internal trucks, that's probably every other day for a full semi-load. And then for Coca-Cola, that could be once a month or twice a month. And then wine and beer, same thing. Just depends on volume and different, ordering and inventory controls with management. So that's why that 8 to 10 range is definitely on the higher end of estimated deliveries. And that's going off of, surrounding market here within Lake County that we oversee.
And so it's really sort of 3 different companies, yours, the milk company, and Coca-Cola?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
And I'd asked before in terms of the flow for those trucks, I just want to ensure that they're all going to come from Milwaukee and then go back on to Milwaukee when they leave. They're not going to go through Greg's Landing.
Correct. We will be very precise in regards to that.
Okay. Can we have that?
We don't foresee it being an issue because of the design that we created with
Yeah.
Dave and with staff. It's almost as if.
Designed
they
for that anyway. They'd prefer that, yeah.
They would be getting themselves in a pickle, I think, if they wanted to try to not follow that route. It's,
Well, when they're leaving perhaps, but when they're coming in, like say the Coca-Cola truck could theoretically be coming from Mundelein going through.
we share
and
the
then
truck
turn-
drive route with all of our vendors.
Yeah,
Yeah, just to ensure that everybody understands the proper circulation and they abide by the safety because we section off different type of paving material throughout our property. So we designate and do an auto turn. Matt loves all the auto turns that I make him do for all of our projects, but we specifically show every one of our vendors exactly how they should truck drive for the entire development area and our property itself.
Okay.
So you're talking about going all the way to Butterfield Road. Don't come in from Butterfield Road.
We can draw as far out as you guys would like, if you'd like
yeah.
to share it
I
with
mean,
us,
could we,
but we talked.
we make
about
that
it.
as one of the requirements that they, is that?
Yeah, I think it's.
Well, it's a public street, but we can still make it a requirement that they, they make that their rule.
Well, isn't it, I believe that it was brought up from before, but even if it was violated, is that something that? I guess Joe could speak on that.
It's my understanding that the roadway is a Faust route, and so we're not able to restrict certain vehicles from maneuvering on it. It's also from an enforcement perspective, very difficult to track where those vehicles are coming or going, because there could be a number of vehicles that might be transporting multiple different locations, and so it's difficult to determine if they're coming just from Aldi's or if they're traveling from Chase or from Mariano's or even just Jewel across the street.
Perhaps, but I'd still like to have it as one of the requirements.
And I think
I
it
mean,
was
we
brought
can-
up from before too, and I'm not trying to
Yeah.
speak out of turn because we're here to follow the rules and requirements. But for us to follow the general development plan guidelines for Menards and everybody else in the retail use area, we wouldn't be required to do anything different than the other retailers, correct?
Well,
So I just don't know how,
So one of the things we've done in the past is restrict construction traffic from utilizing that roadway, and then that's one of the things that we've heard frequently is that that's one of the larger concerns.
Wait. What do you mean construction traffic? Somebody's building a house and they got to deliver the cement. How do they get in there? Right.
Right, no, but he's saying just for, well,
The term generally used is local delivery. And you are allowed, most times I've ever, Chief, correct me if I'm wrong, most times I've seen it written in an ordinance or in any variety of places. The term local delivery means you're going into that neighborhood to drop off or to do something at a specific home, not be cutting through. And I don't know if we can do this specific, but definitely have you encourage it because it just, we don't want it.
Yeah, and we've made that request before.
Yeah.
And that's what we would like you to honor, is to tell your vendors not to drive through the subdivision.
Correct,
Okay.
and if we were to receive feedback from
Yeah,
a local person of the association or from the municipality,
yeah.
we take all feedback, all communication serious. It's not something that, and
Yeah.
I get a lot of this information, and there's not one person that I don't get back to, but that goes at all levels. So if we get that feedback, we respond to it instantly. We follow up with all of our vendors because our vendors are a representation of us as a company, and we do take that very serious. So I'm not saying that I can control every single truck and how they drive, but I can tell you that we have gone through this since day one with the village, with our first meeting with Mike and Joe and Dave. I think it's been brought up several times during construction that we have to abide by those rules, and we are here to follow rules, so.
right, so I appreciate that for construction, but I would like that in the rules for going forward as well.
It's absolutely required for construction, and what he said, but it's absolutely required for construction. And we'd like you to honor it for the other two, as your request.
Now, Dave, when we have to repair Greg's Parkway or Huntington North, will the county assist us in any way, shape, or form?
No.
No, because that was Cuneo and the developers that built the road.
Absolutely.
But, okay. I'm trying to wiggle there on something. But, as far as funding to do repairs on that road, will that be similar to Deer Path when we did all the improvements on Deer Path all the way from 45 to 60 as far as getting additional funding from who? The feds or is it just the state? Who do we get the funding from for Deer Path?
So Greg's Parkway, in terms of the funding, it would be either the motor fuel tax or we go to the mayors and managers and we add that to a program. I suspect what we'd want to do is try to have the county and the feds pay 80% of it and the village pay 20%. So it would behoove us to,
So that potential's there.
yes, sir.
That's what I wanted to hear, because that's what we did on Deer Path.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Because you got to understand too, and in essence, that's built to a very high engineering standard, that whole roadway. It's not built like Deer Path roads, or the other roads that anybody else lives on off of those two roads in Greg's Landing. That's a different road running in front of your house than that road running through the whole subdivision in Huntington North. But in reality, I don't think we have a real problem with truck traffic. But Chief, we got a real problem with truck traffic on those two roads.
No, but I think all problems should be, all perceptions of problems should be taken seriously. And this summer during the construction, there was certainly highlighted concerns about traffic moving around, trying to avoid Route 60. Now that that's done, hopefully we're back to the regular path of traffic.
Yeah.
And just to go back to your point, I'm just not sure how, if it's written up that way, we don't have a problem with that, because we don't foresee it being an issue for us. We just want to make sure that if it's written, that it's just done appropriately, because I think it's been brought up several times, and we're just not sure how that gets restricted or.
Doesn't
It's fine with
Menard,
us.
Menard's issues a set of instructions to the drivers coming from the DC, right? And that was kind of one of the things that they brought forth. So if you do the same thing,
We can.
where is your DC located
Our
anyway?
Oak Creek corporate office.
Oak Creek?
Yep, and our division.
So they're going to be coming down 94 and getting off at 60,
Yes,
making a left turn on the Milwaukee, or, excuse me, a right turn on the Milwaukee and a left on the Greggs. They're not going to go to Butterfield and come back around.
correct. And that's why it shouldn't be an issue,
So
but
if it's a moot point, then great, but why not put it in there?
It's one store per truck, right? Or do you have drop,
Well, that's
do you have
the,
drop shipments?
it depends. Usually it's always a full truck. I mean, everything's gone through logistics and firms, so it's always a full truck delivery. But can something happen where there's a special delivery at certain times? I mean, sure.
so I guess that's the issue then, because you do have a store in Mundelein. I don't want them cutting through the neighborhood to get to the other store, which potentially they would. It might not be the best route for them anyway, but
Correct.
I'd
But I
prefer
would
that
say
not
that's
happen.
once or twice, a very rare occasion where we have that happen. So the proposed language and restriction, we can work with staff on that. If we draft an actual, I guess, requirement to our vendors, similar to what you had brought up, the Menards had completed, to share with staff, that we will share with all of our truck deliveries and distribution centers to make sure that they abide by the correct circulation of the trucks and routes for the truck route. We have no problem with drafting that up and sharing that and working with Dave on a specific language. But those are all things that we would be willing to do.
I think you're doing this in good faith, and to be honest, we can't control every truck that drives through this community. They can come down Deer Path, they can go into I mean, they can go everywhere. So I think you're aware of what we're saying,
Yeah,
and we
absolutely.
appreciate that. So in good faith, we'll make sure that it doesn't happen. If we see it, then a resident can come in and say, hey, wait a minute, and the chief will take care of that too for us. So I appreciate what you're saying, because we can't control. I mean, chances are they're going to go, these are truck drivers, and they're going to know where to go to get in and out in most of these places, so.
I mean, my biggest issue is I can't control if the truck will or will not do that. It's the
Exactly.
same thing as I can't control whether a truck driver knocks over and drives through my light pole in the parking lot.
Exactly.
That happens as well. There's just certain things you never can control, but we're in the same interest as you of trying to make sure
But
that
you
we
hear us
follow it.
loud and clear and take that
Yes.
back to corporate.
Yes.
All right, what other questions do we have for the petitioners here?
How come the potato chips aren't in the first aisle in Stevens Point anymore?
I was waiting to find out if you went.
Yeah.
You liked it, right?
I was just there. You said you weren't going to use the 4x4 tile. You did. You used the 4x4 in the new addition.
No, I told you we were going to make sure we brought in that old 6x6
Oh,
tile
oh.
because it's a lot more money to rip all of it out.
Ah.
And that tile's been there for 20 years and it lasts.
But
And
yeah, I couldn't find, it took 2 extra. I had my wife and granddaughter with me, so my usual 7-minute stop there turned into 20 minutes, but,
well, I told you in May that by the time we hopefully
Yeah.
come and meet again,
Yeah,
that you'll
no,
see
it
a
was-
finished product.
yeah. But the potato chips, it
We
took
did- we
forever
took
to
'em-
find them.
but
You moved.
Just so you know, there are wayfindings in the stores now.
Yes.
So
I
you
saw
have
that.
directional signage to help
Yes,
you find it.
yes, you did. That's new.
But I'm glad you got to see the new layout, the new design, the open concept. This would be even bigger and better, a 12 by 12 tile, it's a whole different layout and feel, but, it's a unique building. It's very unique for the whole nation for an Aldi, and that's something that we brought here with Vernon Hills for this concept. You weren't my first customer that came in line at the I was there at the grand opening, you weren't there.
Wait, no,
Oh,
no, I just went through this last Sunday,
Okay.
a week ago Sunday.
Okay, Chet, what do you want to say? Or anybody else that's here to say anything on Aldi's?
Good evening. My name is Chet Liss. I live in Greg's Landing, and I live at 515 West Torrey Pines Way. I came here to give feedback on Aldi's. I'd like to say congratulations to Aldi's. Their new design is great compared to first design. Good job. I do have some feedback on what is proposed here. On the sign, the current village ordinance is 2 signs per building. Aldi's is asking for more than 2 signs per building. I ask that the village keep it to 2 signs per building. We have an ordinance, and let's obey our own ordinance. regarding any sign, do not allow any variation in the signage. Regarding the construction traffic and delivery traffic, there was a lot of discussion on that. In terms of the construction traffic, yes, we do allow construction traffic for the houses being built. However, what is not allowed is Mike enforces no construction traffic cut through for Menards, Aldi's, the bank. So that is what Mike reinforces. In terms of truck traffic during summertime, when Menards was being built, the biggest violator was the concrete plant. They had their trucks barreling down from their concrete plant in Mundelein down Greg's Parkway into the Menards. I mean, back and forth, and that should not be allowed. So same thing with Aldi's. There should be the village ordinance that says no construction traffic for Aldi's going down Greg's Parkway. Everything must come in from Milwaukee Avenue. Same thing with the delivery traffic. You know, when you talk to the residents of Greg's Landing, you'll have people love Aldi's, hate Aldi's. So you have back and forth. The best thing we could do is make the store the best aesthetics we could do. Make everything just right. One of the biggest concerns about Menards, Aldi's, has always been the cut-through traffic coming down Greg's Parkway. I mean, if you live in Greg's Landing, if you live in the pods, sometimes it's impossible to get out of the pod because of all the traffic on Greg's Parkway. So we do want to restrict whatever we can in terms of delivery traffic. And we're asking Aldi's to be a good citizen. When you put it in your operating instructions, tell your delivery drivers, do not use Greg's Parkway. Come in from Milwaukee Avenue. Landscape, yes.
You can use Greg's Parkway up to the light. It'll go in.
Yeah, that short light, yes.
No, the light.
But not from Butterfield Road.
Right.
Do not come in from Butterfield Road. Landscaping, there's no dimensions on the islands in the parking lot. But talking to landscape experts in the past, when we did Lowe's and we did Menards, et cetera, they always said the same thing. Make the islands a minimum of 6 foot wide. And that's for good tree and shrub growth. So we would want to make sure that the islands are a minimum of 6 foot wide. Then make sure there's an ordinance or something that specifies who's going to maintain that landscaping for Aldi's. Is it Aldi's? Is it Menards? Is it Bradford? One thing I noticed in Menards, a lot of the trees that were planted are dead already. So hopefully we have something in there that says who's maintaining that property. And same thing would go for Aldi's. Now, regarding the retaining wall, there's going to be a retaining wall on the east end. I'd like to challenge us that we do something real exciting to make a real great aesthetic statement. We have an opportunity. That wall is over right by the pond. We have an opportunity to put in something like was done in Wheeling or was done in Niles. They have the waterfall scape. I included pictures in everybody's email. I know it may be a little costly. However, maybe we get some corporate sponsorship from Aldi's, from Menards, from Bradford, along the village, and we really put in something exciting. I think it would make a great marketing tool. People spend money on advertising in the paper, but you put that waterfall in right at the entrance. I mean, it will be a wow. It would be great for the village, great for Aldi's, great for Menards, great for the whole area. So I really ask if the village would, and the builders would seriously consider putting in that waterfall feature.
How many acres is the detention pond?
3 acres.
3 acres. Okay. How about as far as a fountain effect? Waterfall, what kind of number are you talking, Chet, to build a waterfall?
I have no idea. However, you know, you look at a lot
Oh,
of
if it's
things.
a half-
It's the
I know
trade-off.
what they are.
It's,
What do you think they cost?
Yeah.
So you think if it's a $500,000, it's reasonable?
I don't know,
Well-
but yeah.
I can't imagine what it cost at Dundee Road and Milwaukee, and then there's another huge one in Rosemont, okay? At River Road and, what is that, River Road? And Higgins and River Road, again, there was a donation made, obviously for the sign that's finally up and operating, saying Greg's Landing, and that was probably $75,000 or $80,000. I don't know if you're gonna get a waterfall for 80 grand, or if, you know what I mean, so.
Well, you know, a lot of things are hard to come by, but if they're beautiful, when you buy things for yourself, you find a new car, gee, this is extra 3,000, but, you know, hey, what the hell, you know? I mean, again, it's beautiful, and that's what I'm saying. You're building a house, you
We got-
say, hey, look,
We gotta recreate the Art and Architecture Committee.
I will bring.
We haven't had that in a long time. No, these are real nice, these are real expensive. I mean, they're not giving these away, I mean, I know exactly where all of them are.
Hey, this one.
so again,
Is
hope-
this Chet's?
That's mine.
That's yours.
Whose is it?
That's yours.
Oh, that's nice. He took that picture?
No, we all have those.
Oh, Chet did it, yeah. Okay,
I will bring up though is,
okay.
What does Aldi think of that? Hello?
Did Chet share the photo?
Hello?
yes,
Is that possible? Is it feasible? I mean, it is a really nice feature. And can you
As
do
the mayor said, I have never quoted or been involved in regards to bidding out a waterfall. I'm sure it's very expensive, and I do not have it in my authority to even discuss the expenses for that item. And
Right.
I think it's a great aesthetic. Do I think, there's certain things that make anything look better? Yeah, you can go ahead and buy what you want if you want to spend a little bit more money and get some marketing, advertising, but it's just something that we are not in support of, unfortunately.
Well, the only thing is potentially could, you wind up putting a fountain in, which would aerate the pond, blah, 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 but there's gonna be a hell of a lot of stormwater running through those ponds that's gonna keep them clean. Because,
Maybe-
if we ever had a problem with algae in the pond in front of Lowe's,
just pumped it. They just did a
you know, I don't know, because it's so low, you can't see it.
no, I mean, seriously, we didn't treat those ponds, did
We did not treat those ponds.
Right. Yeah, well, there's a lot of storm water goes through those, so, okay.
And Chet, in reference to your 6-foot thing on the divider, on the most recent drawing, you've got all of them are 6 feet, aren't they?
yes.
I
they-
think, as I was looking
they
at
are
it, I
6
just wanted to, I think they're all
I
6
did
feet.
check. The only one is the little entrance, maybe 5, but
Yeah.
that's 6 foot.
Yeah.
They're all 6 foot. I
Yeah.
did check them on it.
All right.
And then your last item, Chet, down here, the shopping cart storage and that you had on your list, that's already in it, and it's number 12 in
I
there.
saw that in the.
Yeah, that they're gonna have to have.
I didn't think you stored their carts yet. You still gotta put
Pay
a
'em.
quarter in,
Yep.
and you drive it back to,
Get your quarter.
That was just a what if.
yeah, well,
Yeah,
these aren't
yeah.
hanging in the lot.
No, that's
You
covered.
gotta get your,
Who does take care of the landscape? Is that you or is that Bradford? I know Bradford. What was the question? The landscaping, when it does die off, who's responsible for that? You-
Aldi will be responsible to maintain the entire property.
Entire property that you're
well, you're
on.
buying the lot, right?
It's a ground lease.
Okay.
So Bradford has the rights to the land. We're ground leasing from Bradford
So you're
upon the
taking
purchase
care
from
of-
Cuneo Estate. So we are fully responsible to maintain our building and our lot.
Right.
We are renting the dirt. It's as if we own the property, but we actually do own our building. And just the cart corral, Chet, just so you can see, which is right here, it's an enclosed cart corral with building material that complements the rest of the building, just to make sure you're aware, and it is a cart rental system.
So you're doing a land lease?
Correct, a land
Okay.
lease.
All right.
Going back to the waterfall. There's a trait that the founder, Ronnie McDonald, had, was persistence. You asked Aldi's what they thought, but how about Bradford also? How about Menards? All of them. I mean, not just Aldi's, but that's for the whole shopping center.
How you doing, sir?
Want to state your name for the record, please?
John Shottish from
I don't
Bradford
think
Real
you got
Estate.
it on.
Just flick it,
John Shottish from Bradford Real Estate.
not working.
I think the waterfall is a nice feature. When we started this process a year ago, it was 1.7 acres. As we worked with staff and improved the site plan, we grew to 2.29 acres. So we don't have the sufficient dollars to build a waterfall. I think the waterfalls you pointed out were municipal-driven beautifications, and so for us, the answer is, although it's pretty, we don't have it in our budget.
How about a fountain?
What is the material?
No, don't let him go yet.
That's-
Whoa,
what about a
whoa.
fountain?
How about a fountain or two?
The way it's structured is the Cuneo Estate owns the detention pond, and all these has to pay the prorated share of maintenance. So I guess that would be more of a question for Cuneo Estate.
So can we condition the approval of Aldi's on Cuneo putting in a fountain?
I don't know, Jesus, you know.
I'll let Steve answer that one.
May I ask, the material for the retention wall is going to be what?
I'll let our engineer field that question.
It's open to interpretation or whatever the village would like to see there. I think before, staff has recommended something similar to what's at the Mariano's across the street, if that's correct. But, you know, whatever's aesthetically pleasing
Just a
can be
thought,
installed.
and I'm not sure, it's no longer called a beer garden, but the wall that's up there is a poured concrete, but it was stenciled, and then it was colored in brick, so it actually looks like stone, rather, I said brick, stone that was put in, and actually it's been several years, and I know for a fact, because I was down there with a woman who was painting the stones out of it. But it's held up extremely well. And that was concrete poured with a stencil, and then they colored the stones. And what they have is a fountain in the front, but that was paid by, I think, Side Taxman.
That's something that certainly can be considered on
look at, yeah.
modular block would probably be the most common scenario, and I think that's what the village detail typically calls for that material. But we can certainly consider it and work with staff.
Okay.
Ranges from 0 up to 9 feet in height.
9 feet.
And there'll be a safety railing on top as well. So,
So when we get into a 9-foot wall, I think some of the comments that I'm hearing as far as it being more of a structural wall than a block wall, I think that's what I'm hearing. What I heard from trustee Marcourt, it's at 45 and 21. It's basically concrete poured with a form liner. They did some staining on it, but maybe you could take a look at that one. But I think we're in the structural wall poured concrete when we're getting to 9 feet.
oh, sure. And this is something that's definitely going to be designed by a structural engineer.
Okay.
So,
And now, he did say 9 foot high, so picture a 9 foot high concrete wall coming into the entrance. So if we cannot afford a waterfall, hopefully you'll find some money, then, like trustee Marquis said, let's make it a very decorative wall. Make it either a prairie stone wall, that's probably would not be ideal, some sort of prairie stone wall to make it nice and decorative.
But it's got to be structural concrete.
But, you know, like anything
I'm sure
else.
there's going to be rebar in the wall,
I mean,
you know,
So,
for 9
Chet,
feet tall.
If I could,
Oh,
Chet,
okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Chet, in terms of a waterfall and that cause, just helping the conversation, we're talking over $500,000. It's just not in the cards. I think that's what they're sharing.
Right.
But we think that there could be a good aesthetic, and I think a poured concrete wall with
what's
some
in-
form liner might get you where you want to be.
And then a fountain,
Just
just
showing
blow it
what's
up
in-
in the air.
What's in front of the beer market,
That's what's
beer
yeah,
head.
in front of that.
We can have, and then we can have concerts
that
there,
nice
be
sign
like
there.
Bellagio's, 2 or 3, you know.
with the colors.
So So how do we enforce this, or how do we get?
I don't
this
want to
happen?
enforce that one.
No,
I
no,
mean-
this one. How do we?
Well, that one, yeah,
How do we
we
get
just
this done?
did. We want, that's what, we would like something as nice as the one down at 45 and
Dave
21.
Brown's aware, and he'll make sure that.
Yeah.
that it gets
A condition of approval
Yeah,
can
this
be
is gonna
added.
go to
Right.
Okay.
copious amounts of, actual, technical review.
Yep.
Right? Yep. Okay,
Okay, thank you for that. Lastly, not to do all these, but trustee Schultz said it, you said it, Mayor. I'd like to compliment David Brown's Public Works Department on the holiday decorations throughout the village. And they are beautiful. Thanks, David.
and pray for no ice storm,
Yeah, thanks.
Followed by a rainstorm. Yeah.
followed by a rainstorm. Okay, is there any other comments or questions from the board on this? If not, is there a motion to approve?
I'll make the motion to approve, or to send this to, the necessary ordinances, and move forward.
Yeah,
we will add-
approvals would be subject to compliance with the departures and the conditions of approvals listed above, which are items, do we need to vote on those one each in LS?
We can vote on that all.
Okay. Does everybody concur with that within reason?
second.
Yes, sir.
So there's a second. Okay, if there's no further comments or questions, roll call.
Trustees Takaoka.
Aye.
Hebda.
Aye.
Schultz.
Aye.
Markwart.
Aye.
Cook.
Aye.
Oppenheim.
One quick comment. I am still disappointed as to the location, but I actually do like your stores, and I'm going to vote aye.
Okay, is that it? Motion carries. All right. Who's next? The kindergarten. Right?
Yep. Thank you.
Is anybody coming forward
Your Honor,
regarding the school?
District 73 and the Park District are both here tonight to present their proposal to construct a approximately 35,000 square foot kindergarten addition to the Sullivan Community Center, located at 635 Aspen Drive. And the petitioners are here to present the PowerPoint.
Yeah, and there's a PowerPoint or a PDF of a PowerPoint up here for you. I'll just go through that rather quickly. The first components of it are drawings from some kindergartners telling the story of the planning for this. So if you get a chance, you might want to look at those. They're quite cute, and they did a great job with that. But as you know, we've come before you before. We are a district that is growing, and we're about 4,400 students. We continue to grow, and we know we're expecting continued growth, either through turnovers and new housing. And so we have a 10-year educational facilities master plan to try to address that. The board is in discussions on that. As you're aware, we had a question, a referendum question that did not pass, so we're looking at how to resolve some of our issues. Part of the 10-year facility master plan is a kindergarten building in partnership with the Park District and the village and the library, and locating it connected to the Sullivan Center and leasing that back. The design is a two-story building. You can see the proposed addition. It's a two-story. It can, we anticipate opening it with about 375 students in there, but it can expand up to almost 500 students without a problem. There are 18 designated classrooms, but there are 4 maker spaces that can be converted into classrooms very easily and quickly. So we could have 22 classrooms within that. We are looking to expand and grow. Trying to keep the class sizes lower than 25, but the 25 number is sort of the max that we've used. But off of current enrollments, the numbers would be around 22 roughly, of what we would expect. We're partnering, there is a playground that is located in between the proposed addition and the Sullivan Center. And then also the current wetlands area, we would, the idea is to pay for the credits of that, and then that would be another outdoor area for the children to use. It has a large group instruction room that would be used for gym, meetings, and also for our cafeteria. And then it has a large administrative area for our offices that we would have. It's a very flexible building and provides for a lot of space to use in different ways for ourselves. One of the guidelines from the board was create a building that is flexible, that can be used for multiple reasons. We don't know in 20 years down the road what's coming our way or what might be happening. We're partnering with the Park District for some parking spaces. We anticipate, I've given the number in anticipation of 70 staff members, staff, administrative staff, nurse staff. 70 staff members, oh, excuse me. 70 staff members will not all be on campus.
It's not on, I don't think.
All right, let me try another one. Got a green light. How's that? Any better? There we go. I can start singing Christmas tunes here. 70 staff members will be on campus, but not all at the same time. And the reason I estimated 70 staff members for, we have speech teachers. Speech teacher is going to show up and service some students, but when that teacher leaves, another one may come. So for speech, art, PE, music, we anticipate the equivalent of one full-time teacher for that building to service, but we may end up actually having 3 different individuals that would be going there depending on schedules. And so I thought it's the best would tell you, we expect 70 folks to be there, but not 70 folks all at one time. You could estimate anywhere between 35 to 45 staff members on site at any given time. And the rest is a matter of scheduling and transitioning in and out on that. We're partnering for some parking spaces with the Park District. We're in conversations with the library about some shared parking. They're looking for some additional, for their addition coming down the road, and we're having conversations.
Is there enough parking at the Park District without the parking lot at the library? To accommodate the teachers' parking?
To answer your question, Mayor, yes, there is. So what we've, in your packet, we've agreed to 45 stalls that we would allot for the school district staff to use. And what that would do is just our full-time staff that work at this, out of the Sullivan Center, we would have them park on the far south end, which is basically the aquatic center parking lot, on a daily basis to make room for the school district staff. We have more than enough parking there. And then obviously the timing on it works out nicely when school's out for the summer. Obviously we ramp up with our aquatic center opens then, so we would have those available spaces for our patrons. We want to make sure that the spaces we have allocated in front of the community center entrance are for our patrons, basically. And we feel like even our peak times, which is our preschool, which is pretty busy from 9 a.m. to noon, and then we have another afternoon session. But what we're talking about with the school district for pickup or drop-off, which is another subject matter, they're early in the morning before we even, our building doesn't open until 7:30, and we don't really see a lot of activity at peak until about 8:30, 9 o'clock. By that early drop-off, if that's the route that we're going to go, there's plenty of space for accommodating that potential need.
And we're looking at, we would be identifying those parking spaces by painting them. Right now, we're looking at blue or some other color that would indicate for folks. I mean, visually, they could see this is where you go if you're going to use the building for schools, and the rest would be then for the Sullivan Center. So you can see where the addition is proposed. There's a blue stripe on your drawing, and that's where the parking would be. The outside, our architects have looked at the surrounding buildings, and so the outside of the building will be architecturally matched to a lot of the features that you see around. This gives you a brief floor plan. You can see the purple center room is called a studio. It is actually a classroom, but we'd be using that for art and dramatic play. It's a 2-story building. One floor would be dramatic play, and the other floor would be for art. But those can be converted immediately into a classroom if needed. And then as you go through, you can see that we also have up on the first floor, that red area is on one floor it is a workroom for the teachers, and another it is a sensory room for special needs students and adults. And again, partnering with the Park District, that would be available to folks in the evening, the adults. Just some renderings of the outside of what it would look like. And again, the outside, I don't have samples but the rendering shows it, trying to match up the lines of the Sullivan Center and match up the architectural features.
Who
So
is the architect?
DLR is our architect.
But they're not here.
They're not here this evening.
So you're the architect, huh?
I'm here, yeah. I drew this all by myself.
Yeah, right.
And so we feel that it's a nice compact building that provides us the needed space. You can see here, this is where the playground would be in between the two buildings. We're having conversations about what types of finish. Would it be a grass? Would it be artificial? It'd be really interesting to try to get in there and cut the grass, in one of those situations. So we anticipate something a little different there, but reasonably cost. And then you can see where we connect to the gym with a walkway to the building, but all secure accesses to keep separate. Here's just some renderings of what the inside of some of the classrooms and some of the maker spaces would look like. And real good use of space in there. You see the whiteboards. The whiteboards, when you move them either direction, open up, and that's where the cubbies are for the kids to hang their coats. But it's got a lot of nice features to it. It's flexible. We anticipate, we have a $12 million budget. Right now, the estimate is 12.1 a little bit. We are right now, the board's approved the design, so the architects are in the design development phase, getting ready to get documents so we can go out to bid. We anticipate bid March or April, putting a shoveling around in June, and completion for the fall of 19. And kind of going from there. There's sort of a building schedule there too. Traffic patterns, we are starting in the morning. We start before the Sullivan. Is there the diagram of the traffic pattern? Sorry. We would be starting before the Sullivan Center would be starting, so dropping off is not a problem. Yes.
What is the circulation?
Wait a second, huh? Well, no, and these are going to be, you want this to be 2 stories now?
Yes. This is
Okay, so how much does that affect the price of what you want to pay? Where you had 12 million, 14 million, so how much more is it going to cost then?
The 2-story, it
About
does
the
come in at
same?
the 12.1. It actually is a little less expensive.
Oh,
You have a
good.
smaller footprint. Also, the footprint all stays relatively on the Park District portion of the land. Doesn't encroach into I think it's lot 2 that's in between.
But isn't there added expense because you're going up and, you got to do different things from a structural steel standpoint?
We're working with the DLR, and LAMP is helping us with it. They actually estimated that it's cheaper for us to go up as opposed to a bigger footprint. And for this site, it's nice if we can make it as compact as possible for the students because it's a fairly tight location.
No basement?
No. The administrative center, the offices are required to have specific storm shelter requirements. I think can stand up to 250-mile-an-hour winds with, something shooting at it. It's a requirement for us to have, and it can hold all the occupants within that building, within that area. So we have that taken care of as well.
Good. Does the board have any questions on this?
Tons. Start out, what's the bus circulation? I don't, they pull in and back out, or?
Well, what we're looking at doing,
Dave, you wanted to handle this one? Yeah, you don't have to. We had a meeting with,
Right.
the library district and Bonnie Quirk and who's the other guy? Nathan, Johnson. And then we had Dave there, John there, and Joe. We got an updated drawing on that, but it's not here, go ahead, Dave.
Is this our,
that is not, that's just the
is
site
there
location.
something that
Right,
goes
right,
in
right.
closer?
I thought there was one before we started this that showed the.
Is there any way to get the library?
This is perfect, this is perfect.
Yeah.
So, one of the charges, Mayor, that you had before was, as part of this Aspen campus, was we have existing issues on Aspen Drive. In terms of this specific project, we need to go through more discussions and traffic studies, et cetera. But essentially, we're hearing there's about 8 buses. Some of the vehicles that are coming for kindergarten, they may already have a family, so they're dropping them off at the junior high school. They're coming over to the kindergarten. So it might not be an additive car onto Aspen. Really, the solution for Aspen Drive is we do not want to add 2 more lanes of traffic. This is an area with kids. We don't want them crossing the additional 2 lanes. So really what our goal is trying to disperse the traffic off of Aspen. The board, as part of Victory Center, we were able to acquire Atrium Drive, thank you. So as part of that, we have the opportunity to disperse traffic to the east towards Deer Path. So this is a good opportunity. We've tried many things. We talked to them about the Collier building, these 3 squares right here, and we're unsuccessful of getting the easement through that. So then our next opportunity was going to Phillip Drive. And so in terms of Phillip Drive,
What is it? Is it 25-foot easement?
in terms of the easement, we have to work through it. There's a 25-foot back-to-back roadway that's being proposed.
Yeah.
And I guess I'll quit calling it a roadway. It's actually just a drive aisle. So off of Phillip, the connection and back, this is not ultimately the plan that we are going to have, but it's a good start. To answer your question as far as circulation, people can, passenger vehicles could come in here, and then when they, okay, let me start up. I do not see a concern in the morning. The staggering of the park district and the schools, I think that offsets it. So I'm not worried about the morning. It really comes down to when they're picking up the kindergarten kids. So as part of that, I hear from Nick that it's between 10, maybe it ends up being 20 minutes, is the duration of the pickups and people leaving. So this isn't something that's happening for 8 hours. It's a short duration period. So what we're looking to do is after they come in, they pick up their kid, then we could use this roadway to have them slowly disperse as they're leaving. Short duration. It gets people off of Aspen. It moves them towards Deer Path. So I think that's an
Yeah, so a
enhancement.
car and a bus could pass. On the, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
The
You wanna touch on that?
The other piece for us is that we're only bringing 170 kindergartners from the north side of 60. We're consolidating all the kindergartners except for dual language. Dual language is based at Town Line, so we'll leave 75 there. We're only bringing 170 from the north side into this building. The majority are already on the south side, and our estimates are about 10% of our population are car riders. So you're looking at additional 17 to say 24 cars that would be dropping off or picking up, not 170 cars
Right.
coming through. And so we've been watching that closely and making some estimates on that as well.
So from the park board's
Yeah.
concern, and I think they've made some public comments to this, our concern is the afternoon and the stacking of potential vehicles in the aquatic center. And what Dave just presented with that potential of Phillip Road opening, and if we could get cars to come through what is, that offset drive off of Aspen, and as Nick alluded to earlier, if we had this designated lane that they kind of outlined in that blue color, that we can just make sure that parents at Hawthorne use that lane consistently, I think that'll work for us. And then just obviously that works better for us if we can open up that access road and get people out, fill up, and moving them east, rather than turning back through the parking lot and coming back out. Afternoon, we get crowded. I mean, we have an afternoon, preschool program. We've got a lot of extra activities, after-school programs going on, so we're a little concerned about that.
Would any part of this be connected to the park district facilities?
Yes.
But thought we were just doing a loop and going back out.
We think with the meeting that we had with the president of the library, that she sounds receptive to allowing this Phillip Road connection, so we want to take advantage of that.
Well, I understand that, but so you're saying if I'm at the swimming pool, I'm gonna have access to get out this way?
No, the thing we would talk about, Mayor, is
No,
it
you're
would be
talking
gated.
gates.
It
There
would
are
be
gates
gated.
between it, but
Oh,
it
yeah,
would be
okay.
connected.
Yeah, okay.
So it would be just enforced by the school. Just when school is letting out is the only time we would have, Nick and his team would have staff that would open the gate to allow access in and out. And that's it. The rest of the day, it's shut down.
So we had-
Wouldn't be allowed.
we had-
We would ask, like if we have a large event at the Sullivan Center, we'd like to be able to police that. And the park board, just so you know, has agreed if there's some cost tied to this, we see the benefit of it for our patrons and our events, that we would be willing to support extending that road and making sure that, you know, we would have access to it probably 3 or 4 times a year for larger scale events.
Yeah, sure.
And adding to what he said, there would be a gate off of the end of Phillip.
Yeah.
There would be a gate at the Park District side too, so we can control the flow
Sure,
of traffic.
Sure. No. Yeah, no, fine. What was the other thing we do have to do, some storm sewer, right?
So when the roadway's extended, one of the things that we've done is there's the detention vault south of the Victory Center. We set up the infrastructure as part of the grant that we received previously. So there is a storm sewer from that vault going westerly that serves the library parking lot already. So when the roadway is extended, we drop a couple of catch basins in there, and I don't expect a large cost in terms of storm sewers. The very good thing, and I'm glad to hear that their footprint is getting smaller, because with a smaller footprint, we have more available capacity in that detention vault.
Good. Now, and then the reason for this road configuration is because whoever owns the buildings, the low-rise buildings, they don't want to talk to us about actually purchasing and cutting through in a more direct route.
We did ask that question, reached out to them, and it makes it less marketable for them, so we were not successful. That was one of our first
Plus,
options.
he's claiming he's got tenants signed up for those buildings.
That's our understanding, that they just signed an agreement for 10 years. I don't know the terms, so.
Right. Okay,
My other comment, before I was interrupted, was I'm not a fan of this dark element of the offset or whatever the closest. I'd prefer just a general continuation of the colors and motif of the existing Sullivan Center, because hopefully someday when population stabilizes or whatever, the Park District will be buying that or leasing it from you and using it at some point in time for,
We can count on that.
well,
But
but to make it a little more cohesive. You're putting in an architectural element just for the sake of having an architectural element. I don't see the,
this thing?
yeah, the brown. Yeah,
Yeah, well,
I'm just making a point.
well, we can't.
I know we have no jurisdiction here.
No, I mean,
That's part of the wonderful parts of Illinois state law, that we have no jurisdiction here.
Just want to make sure.
But with that being said, not a fan of that.
Yeah.
I think you've come up with a reasonable solution for the circulation. I didn't know about that until just now, so
Yeah.
that's good. Good luck.
Yeah, I don't, does anybody else have any questions?
No, it's
If
needed.
not,
It's
you
needed.
can
It's
leave.
needed.
Well, thank you.
Thanks for coming in. Thanks for the presentation.
I just wanted
And,
to add one thing, because this is really, and I think you're probably aware, this, throughout the state, a lot of my Park District colleagues that I talk to are very jealous when I tell them about the cooperation of 4 government bodies collectively working together, with the spirit of making sure that this happens in our community. And I think that and Nick and I we presented at the Illinois School Conference last weekend, and we talked about this. And fortunately, we didn't have a big turnout, but, those that did show, and we had members from the school board work with us and their legal counsel, and people are really shocked when you tell them that it's not so much about money, it's about what's the common goal here that we're all trying to reach with, and we're all kicking in to make it happen. And the tax dollars that we saved are tremendous. And so spreading that message throughout the community is really important. And I think working with John and the staff here at the Village, and even Dave Archer with the library, and Nick and his team, it's been fantastic. And I think, we talked about how we have 26 elected officials between all bodies that I think, again, is something we got to keep in mind, that all of us as administrators, we got to continue to make sure that all of you are kept in the loop and have bought into this particular concept. And I think once it's accomplished, it's going to be something that people can really hang their hat on. And so we should all be proud of it.
I'd second that. I mean,
Yeah, I'd third it.
yeah, other superintendents are like, what?
I'm just going to throw a bone out there for you. Being one of the preschool teachers at the Park District, you may want to show our future students some of this, the parents especially. I got the 2-year-olds, they're all going to be impacted, and I think they'll be very, very pleased with what they're going to see. So
We'll do
just
that.
something to do about maybe having a little coffee for those
Sure.
women as they sit out in the front lobby and they start talking at something
Yeah.
to show them. I think they'd really like it. So
It's wonderful for community. I second what he said, and I also wanted to thank
Jeff, do you want to say
Joe and
anything?
everybody. I appreciate everything.
Jeff Bard?
Ha-
No?
no.
Sonali.
He's not.
If you said no, that's, you did.
Give him a mic.
I guess I'll just reiterate that the cooperation among the governmental bodies is really something to be proud of as a resident of this community and a taxpayer. Thank you.
Yeah, well, we'll keep going. We'll keep grinding it out. All right, guys, thanks.
Middle South is aware they're going to have to change their mile run course, right?
Thank you.
So, Your Honor,
Okay.
since this will require an amendment to the special use permit, I think from the direction we received from the board, we'll begin technical review and ultimately a public hearing before the Planning and Zoning Commission.
Sure. Okay, but we don't have to take any vote or action tonight.
No.
Yeah, okay. All right, guys.
Thank you.
Adios.
Thank you.
Next is finance or capital improvements or consideration of tax amendments establishing definitions for long-term rental, short-term rental, and consideration of regulations establishing long-term rentals as a permanent use in residential district. Okay, Mike Atkinson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and as you're all aware, this topic has been discussed twice now within the last 18 months. The first discussion was in July of 2016, and this was in response to increased popularity of search sites for short-term rentals such as Airbnb. At that meeting, the board determined that short-term rentals should remain prohibited in residential districts. The second discussion occurred just this past October, and this was in response to a request from a homeowner in Greg's Landing that wanted the board to consider a zoning amendment that would allow short-term rentals. At that meeting, the board reaffirmed their previous findings and again determined that short-term rentals should remain prohibited. Although short-term rentals are clearly not permitted and the board has reviewed this and upheld that finding, the question arises as to the appropriateness of long-term rentals. The zoning code really doesn't cover rentals of any length whatsoever. Staff is recommending further review and refinement of this topic so that we can clearly differentiate between short-term and long-term rental. Staff is recommending that rentals of 12 months or longer be permitted. That's what we're requesting that the board consider. So with that in mind, we've put together some draft zoning regulations that are attached to your packet. And the regulations would, they'd basically do two things. First of all, they would create a definition of short-term rentals that would be less than 12 months, and then it would also create a definition of long-term rentals, which would be at least 12 months or longer. And then it would establish that long-term rentals are permitted in residential districts. And then for clarity, it would also reiterate that short-term rentals are prohibited.
And we, in our ordinance addresses boarding houses too.
Yeah, that's correct. Under the definition of dwelling, the definition states that lodging houses, actually, is the term used, is prohibited, and that's the part of the code that we were able to rely on to prohibit short-term rental. But lodging house it's kind of an old term, so really we're recommending that we come up with a new definition of short-term rental, and then we place that in the section of the code that covers home occupations. We think that's a more appropriate section of the code, and then clearly prohibited in that section. That way there's no question that short-term rentals are not
Well,
permitted.
and should we set up I don't know, maybe we could do it within our ordinance, set up an area of town, potentially. And I'm not, for somebody who would want to come in and do a bed and breakfast or something like that. But, you know, okay, this is where you can do it. Not on your house.
Well,
You know what I mean?
yeah, if the board thinks there's certain areas in the village where we want to, kind of reopen the discussion of short-term rental, staff is willing to listen and.
Well, I mean, that'd be a topic I'd bring up when we all sit down to redo the strategic plan and look at the comprehensive plan after the first of the year. But, yeah, okay.
But for tonight, what staff's recommending is we create these new definitions and consider the draft amendments for long-term rentals so that the zoning code would expressly permit rentals that are at least 12 months or longer. And if the board concurs with this, then it would be appropriate to make a motion that would direct this matter to the Planning and Zoning Commission for a public hearing.
Well, okay, but if we really are, setting up, rules and regulations regarding rental, of houses and such, is there any additional authority we can impose on the NOC? The owner / as opposed to the tenants from an inspectional standpoint?
There are, in addition to.
I mean, where we knock on the door, we got to come in and look around.
Yeah, absolutely. In addition to the zoning regulations that would permit it, the board can consider amendments to the licensing provisions of the code that would require a license for any type of rental, long-term rental in this
Right,
case.
right.
And then as part of that license, there'd be a fee that would cover the cost to do the inspection that would be required before there's ever a new lease that's signed or a new occupancy of the space.
Well, what about, somebody renting a house for 5 or 10 years? Would you want to?
Well, that's something that could be discussed as part of the license. We could require it before a new occupancy. You could require annual inspections.
Yeah,
That's
that's what I
something that
was thinking.
something we could look into, sure.
Because you can, you can get some of these houses that really get run down in a hurry, and they exist.
Yes, sir.
If you go out campaigning.
Yep.
Knock, knock, and you look, holy God, I mean, seriously.
No,
You know,
I
and
agree.
you-
yeah.
Do you own this? No, I'm a renter. Oh, okay.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's where I'm coming from. Just, okay, let's inspect the house. If you want to be a landlord, okay, we want to inspect it and make sure you're not a slumlord.
Well, if the board's in concurrence, we could send the zoning matter to the Planning and Zoning Commission for a public hearing for the zoning amendments, and then staff at the same time could work on licensing amendments that would require inspections at whatever interval the board determines to be appropriate. Then we can bring both of these back so you can consider the licensing and inspection part at the same time as the zoning regulations after the Planning and Zoning public hearing.
Okay. Any comments or questions from the board on this one?
You may want to go to Elgin. They've got the model ordinance, I think, it's under a different auspices, but they have the model ordinance for the inspections.
Thank you. We'll check that out.
So do you need a motion to refer this to planning and zoning?
Yes, please.
Okay, so made.
Can I just bring?
Yeah.
to-
Trustee Mark.
Uh,
Is there a motion? There's a
yeah,
motion.
motion made.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion is second. Trustee Markwart.
Just a question too, are we doing a check occasionally, per month or whatever? I know Tom has, done a check, and I do know that the individual that came in, they were still pursuing it. Am I correct?
We do checks. There was originally 16 when the board considered this back in October. Our last check, there was 4. They're difficult. I mean, it's something you have to continually chase down, and you don't know the address unless you actually register and sign up to occupy that unit. You have to actually commit money to it. So the way we're able to follow up on it is when they provide a picture, it helps us match up the property. In some cases, it's real convenient. They include the address number in the picture, the house number, but it's difficult to follow up on, but we do check it regularly.
Just ask Tom, he's done an extremely good job of finding one in particular, which I have to admit. So
Yeah.
sometimes you do have to do a little looking out of it, but
He did a very good job when we were able to resolve that one.
Yeah, I mean, this isn't top secret, this is Airbnbs.
Correct.
Yeah, okay. All right, so we have a motion and a second. If there's no further comments or questions, roll call, please.
Trustees Schultz,
Aye.
Markwart,
aye.
Cook,
Aye?
Oppenheim,
Aye.
Takaoka,
Aye.
Hebda.
Aye.
Motion carries. Fiscal year 18-19 draft capital improvement plan, Dave Brown.
The capital improvement program plan is included in your board packet. It includes 5 years of CIP planning, and we respectfully request direction from the board on the plan. Following the committee of the whole meeting, our goal is to modify the draft plan based on the direction from the board and projected revenue and funding options that will be developed as part of the budget process. Ultimately, the CIP will be refined to identify projects for inclusion in the FY 18-19 budget that will be presented to the village board for further consideration and approval in March 2018. Finance Director Larson will help us with the mid-year financial update, which ties into my presentation.
Yeah, so, yeah.
So, with no further ado, let me jump into the plan. There is the spreadsheet in front of everyone. The first item is the motor fuel tax program. So the road rehab program for 2018, we're proposing to do Midway and Linden. Instead of a full, these are our only 2 concrete streets in town. Instead of full removal and replacement, because they have failed to that degree, what we're looking to do is actually mill the surface and then put a 2-inch overlay. We've talked to Libertyville. They went through their 5-year referendum and did this and have done it for many years. So I've met with Libertyville. I've met with A-Lamp, who did work in Libertyville. And I've brought 3 different engineers, including the Portland Cement Association, out to the site to look at various options. I'm comfortable with, by driving some of the Libertyville streets, as far as we know that each of the joints with asphalt over it, it's going to reflect back up. It's going to happen. But at what time is it going to happen? Looking at their streets, I drove streets that are 12 years old, 14 years old, and then some of them that are newer. We will have some reflectivity of the joints coming up, but instead of spending $900,000, we could probably do it about half of that. Similar to our A streets where we had pozzolanic base, and we just understood with the board's support that we just won't get a full life out of it, but we're going to get 2/3 of a life out of it. And so when it's unacceptable, we go back in and we do what we do with asphalt. We will mill it and we'll put another layer of asphalt down.
The Libertyville streets you're talking about are like over in like Gulf and Fourth and that area where they redid those?
Absolutely. Off of Butterfield Road in Gulf, it's the two streets just north of there, and I've driven those streets. So that's my recommendation, I think.
Is there any, you're talking to do a 2-inch lift of asphalt.
Yes, sir.
What about, kind of white topping it with concrete? Has that ever been done?
It has been done in terms of the different methods that we've reviewed. That's one of the options, but I'm recommending, based on all my research, that we just do the asphalt overlay.
Okay.
It's
I
a
don't
mo-
have a problem with it. I mean, how are you going to get so the milling will take the 2 inches of concrete off?
Good question. Let me help you with
Yeah,
that.
I mean,
So
that's got to be, that's got to be the Dust Bowl revisited.
So
Man.
the concrete, the curb and gutter is tied to the concrete pavement. It's monolithic. And so what they do is from the gutter, they'll go out about 12 inches. They'll plunge cut about 2 inches deep. They'll go to the crown of the road and they'll grind the surface from 0 to -2. And then from there, you need to do some patching of the concrete. You need to put a sand mix that has asphalt in it to patch some areas also. And then it's the overlay. The overlay will go from the crown and it'll go to that area that's been cut 2 inches deeper. And then you do a shingle type effect that it makes it into the gutter and continues as you would expect.
But at the crown, it'll be 2 inches. Everything will be 2 inches.
It'll be 2 inches higher than what's out
But I
there
mean,
right
the
now.
thickness of the asphalt will be 2 inches from the crown out.
A minimum of 2 inches.
Yeah, okay.
It may end up being 2.5, but at least 2 inches.
All right.
So that's my recommendation. I think it goes in line with how much motor fuel tax money we're receiving, bridge tax money, whatever it is. There certainly is a shortage. So we're trying to do more with less money. And that's why, one of the reasons we're recommending Midway and Linden. And it has needed it for a long period of time, and I think it's overdue. Moving forward for future years, instead of the 1.2 or 1.4 million, we just have to live within our means. And so we're really looking at, we're going to be spending about $800,000 each year moving forward. But as Trustee Schultz has shared with me a few times, we need to really resolve a funding source for our roads. So they are that important to the village.
You're talking about a municipal tax on fuel?
There's a lot of different options. That was one of the tools in our toolbox.
Right.
So,
Yeah,
so I'll continue. By all means, interrupt me if there's somewhere where you want to jump in. So where it says in the spreadsheet, consultant inspection, we're not doing the removal and replacement. We don't need to hire a consultant. So the extra $57,500, we won't be spending that money. Steve Maslow, Tom Brentman, they'll be doing that in-house. Moving forward, preventive maintenance section. These are the same preventive maintenance programs that we've done in the past. It's the pavement marking, crack sealing, patching of asphalt, reclamite. We are showing a line item for seal coating, but I think we're starting to move away from seal coating because we're passing the ordinance banning PAH. Once you put seal coating down, you can't use reclamite on top of it. It doesn't soak in. So those are consistent with past years, no change. This annual sidewalk program, $50,000. That's two different things that we do. And to help two of the newer trustees on our sidewalk program specifically is, one is just a saw cutting operation that there's a trip hazard and we hire a contractor. They go out and they just shave that trip hazard off. It's just a simple horizontal saw. They take care of the trip hazards, they clean up, and they keep moving down the road, and most people don't know that they were even there. There's no sod replacement, et cetera. We've saved a lot of money by doing that. The only time we do removal and replacement is really when we're getting up against curb and gutter. When we're touching curb and gutter, then there's the 88 panels that we deal with. So those are more removal and replacement. Majority of our program is the saw cutting of trip hazards. Capacity enhancements. The Lakeview Fairway Route 60 project is moving through. We've moved through phase 1. We're into the phase 2 process. 80% of the project is being funded by the feds for 20% local match. There are things that are not eligible for that financing, and that goes into the FY 2021, which gets into utility relocation, is not funded. Let's see. In terms of the Aspen Drive, adding a northbound to eastbound right turn lane onto Route 60. That was in this current budget year. We got a proposal, and because of what was just presented to you tonight, we're really looking at whether we want to move forward with that project or not. We're looking at the expenditure would be $130,000 for engineering and $450,000 for the construction. So with that money, is that the best way to spend our money on Aspen or not? One of the concepts that we're talking about of getting people off of Aspen Drive is potentially on the west side of Aspen, having a connection. I forgot what you call the lake in between the junior high school.
Oh, Tumachagua.
Tumachagua.
Yeah, it's an
So-
old Potawatomi word.
So from the junior high school, it would cross said lake and it would connect to the southerly campus. So having some other connection there would move people off of Aspen Drive. So right now, it's in the proposed budget. We want to have more discussions. We want to understand the proposal and whether or not the library was going to allow a connection off of Phillip or not. So we just heard that today, and some good progress there.
Is there, with a potential connection, would there make any sense connected to Butterfield? Because that was chewed on pretty good when we were doing, when all the craziness was going on with, who owned all the land? That Aspen points on.
Yes,
Clavey.
Clavey.
I remember we got into that discussion more than once because, blowing it out behind the damn mobile station.
Yeah.
The problem is you bump up against
That was a
the
problem.
the railroad
There's a-
track and
yeah,
everything.
there's a lot
It
of
made it
problems.
absolutely
Yeah.
impossible.
Absolutely. And that, for those reasons, that's why we didn't pursue that.
Yeah.
You have to have an overpass.
Yes.
The Seymour. What's that road there with, where the plumbing operations at? What is it?
You talking about Armor Boulevard?
No,
Yeah.
off of Butter. Where,
Armor McCormick. Yeah, Armor.
where the business park is.
And at the VHAC, the VHAC to American Hotel Register, we did make a connection. It's being used frequently now that the American Hotel Register fields are being more and more used by the school and also lacrosse tournaments, et cetera. Right now, it's a dirt connection. It's heavily traveled. We'd like to make it asphalt now. It's been in there for a few years. So that's where the $70,000, it'd include a split rail fence, maybe some landscaping along it.
What's the linear cost per foot, and how wide is it?
So in terms of the width, that's the easy part. The width is going to be in a 10-foot, maybe a little bit larger. Linear distance, I'm not certain on the exact number, but we're probably talking it would be in the 300-foot range. And then in terms of the cost, with it being such a small project, we want to try to tie it to some other ones, potentially as I go through it, the Muni and some patching operations there. The Phillip Road building, we anticipate that we will own the Phillip Road building into the future, so there's $20,000 to help with some repairs there. Street lighting, controller upgrades. We have some very old controllers, Deer Path area, et cetera. So every year we try to fix 1 or 2 controllers. Street lighting, LED fixtures, $15,000. As some of our light systems fail, we end up transitioning. We don't want to go back to high pressure sodium, so we're installing LED in its place. We're slowly going through our system and moving towards LED. Let's see. And then there's the open space areas. So
Those LEDs, are they color corrected to be the true bright orange light, sunlight, or are they white light?
it's more, these ones are more of a white light. We're more in 4000K wave.
Right, the cool,
The cooler
as
lights.
opposed to 2500.
Yeah.
Does anybody ever comment about it? Because that was a point of curiosity I had with the city of Chicago. I know they're converting to LEDs. Are they going to stay with the warm? Because it is quite an interesting sight when you're flying in, seeing the grid work of the city all in that high-pressure sodium with the warm light.
Yeah. I think people really like the high pressure sodium, more of a yellow color than the annoying maybe European headlight type. But LED and electrical, that's really what's driving moving things towards LED. Replacement for LED, they can last us 10 years without
Right.
changing a bulb.
Hey, can I ask you a question?
Yes, sir.
Do we need to go through this whole thing tonight? You know what I mean?
No, we don't.
You know,
We're zipping along.
well, it might not, if we keep commenting on everything, like, if we want to roll, let's roll. I mean, we won't be walking out of here until 10 o'clock tonight if we all start asking questions.
Maybe just
Let me
maybe
see.
the six-figure projects. How about that? We can winnow it
We're
down.
going to discuss this again at late.
So, let me keep talking and you stop me when you want to
Okay,
stop
where's
me.
these six-figure ones? I want to see them.
Okay, open space, CV ditch is the next one. What we're looking to do is combine all of our open space areas into one contract and have it for multiple years. Instead of having someone who goes into an area and they have to scrub it clean and then do a real intense fix, if they have multi-year contracts, we're going to save money over the long haul. So that's what the $120,000 is helping with all of our open spaces like Harvey Lake, Hazeltine, et cetera. Lashen Center demo,
Ooh,
$300,000 to demo that building.
where's that one at, on 3?
Yes.
So that's on page 3.
boss.
Okay, okay.
Okay, moving along.
When do we want to do that one? Next year, summer or fall or
Spring.
spring? No.
Fall when the windows are closed.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
yeah. I would say yeah, yeah.
Yes.
Because it'll take longer than you think.
yeah.
Absolutely.
All right.
So I'm trying to find another one that's, so Public Works, the last one, that's 6 figures. Our 1994 vintage flat roof, $250,000. Right now, this is a holding number. What we have hired Patterson Roofing experts, and they're going through all of our flat roofs as part of this budget year. And we're anticipating that because of the 1994, that it's past its lifetime. So we'll see what they come back with. They are going to give us good, better, and best approach to replacements of
And
the
so
roofs.
we need repairs being done. That's why we let the contract earlier to do multiple roofs at multiple buildings. in town. Didn't we just vote on that?
Uh,
Yeah, to do patching. It's a basic patch jobs.
So I can answer that. So yes, so those were for our shingled roofs.
Yeah.
These are for our flat roofs.
Oh, okay.
So for our flat roofs, we did hire a expert that's going through, and they're telling us
Sure.
what the costs are. They're going to give us a nice report, they're going to give us estimates, and then we can tell you specifically how much it's going to be and what order we should do different ones. And they're going to give us, again, good, better, and best in terms of the options, so we can make those decisions. So if there's any more questions, I'm here to answer.
Is that it? You done then?
Or I'm done.
Anybody have any questions for Dave? All right, that was great, Dave.
Thank you.
Okay, you almost done, Nikki? Do you want to stand at the presentation altar?
Oh, no.
You get more airtime that way, don't you?
What's different between what you're going to show there and?
So there's only two slides that are different between what is in front of you and what is included in the packet, and those are the two slides that contain figures on income tax, because we've modified those numbers. Okay, so what you've all been waiting for is this is the best part of the board meeting.
God bless you.
In front, included at each of your seats and in the packet was a memo and a presentation providing a mid-year update on the village's current financials. The purpose of this presentation is to give the board an idea of our current financial status and revenue trends before we head into the budget process. These notes, please note that these figures are at the 5-month mark, so everything is as of September 30th, and it could very well change. So we will be updating these later on in the year. As of September 30th, we would anticipate that the budget would, on revenues and expenditures, would be approximately 41.7% expended, or revenues would be received in that same amount. This table reflects the current status of revenues by fund, and this reflects that all but 4 of our funds are within the threshold where we would anticipate them being. It is important to note that many of our revenues are trending at a flat or downward level at the 5-month mark, so that's why we are kind of talking about this today, to get out ahead of it before we start the budget process. The capital and the town center TIF district funds are higher than the benchmark due to the nature of receipts that are deposited into these funds. These receipts are distributed by the county, and they're primarily distributed in the months of May through October. The general fund is higher than the benchmark due to higher than normal building permit activity, which is seasonal. And the summer celebration represents all of the revenue that will be received in the current year, since this event took place in July, and that's obviously over. The Melody Farm TIF fund reflects the entire amount of bond proceeds that were issued in May, and this is all the revenue that's expected to be received in the TIF district this year. And lastly, the golf course is higher than the benchmark due to the seasonal nature of their operations. As of this date, all of the departments within the general fund are below the threshold of 41.7%, with the exception of 3 departments, or 3 areas, and that's the police department, the president and village board, and the other category. The police department budget has been impacted by a number of payouts related to recent retirements and increased overtime due to staffing shortages. The staff is continuing to evaluate operations to address these issues and reduce costs for the remainder of the year. The president and village board category is higher than the benchmark due to the timing of payroll at the beginning of the year, and this is not anticipated to be a concern moving forward. Lastly, the other category reflects expenditures for special events that have already taken place, such as Oktoberfest and 4th of July, so that is also higher than what we would expect from a benchmark. Outside of the general fund, the summer celebration fund and golf course fund are above the benchmark due to, again, the seasonal nature of their operation. Both of these are offset by revenues. The Melody Farm TIF fund is at approximately 99% of expenditures. This reflects the transfer of $18 million of bond proceeds into the escrow account, which is pursuant to the village's redevelopment agreement. This was the primary expense that was budgeted in that fund this year. Okay. Understanding that the figures are shown as of September 30th, it's important to remember that the village still has some significant expenditures coming in this fiscal year. This would include remaining invoices for the 2017 road program, the Village Hall meeting space repurposing, and Deer Path culvert repairs. Going forward, it is important to remember that as a home rule entity, as Dave alluded to earlier, the village has more flexibility in setting taxes, fees, and charges for services than municipalities that are not home rule. In addition, the village currently has approximately 105% of annual general fund expenditures in reserve, so the village is fully equipped to weather a short-term shortfall in revenues. It's important to remember, however, that any modifications in state disbursements could draw this number down rather quickly. In addition, as a reminder, both Moody's and S&P have clearly indicated that the general fund balance reserve must equal at least 75% of operating expenditures in order for the Village of Vernon Hills to maintain its AAA rating. And this is specific to Vernon Hills because we rely so heavily on sales taxes as our main source of revenue. As the board may recall, the General Assembly passed the state budget in July, ending a 2-year budget impasse. As part of the new budget, the state modified a number of revenue distributions to local governments, which included a 10% reduction in income tax sharing, or otherwise known as LGDF. The administrative fees on both the home rule sales tax and telecommunications tax were also implemented.
Can I ask you a question? On the corporate and the individual income tax increases, they went into effect on what date?
July 1? I believe it was July 1.
Of
Retro.
17?
Of 17.
Okay.
And neither one of those increases were passed through to the local governments. That all stayed with the state.
Well, yeah, and I'm sitting here going, at some point, we gotta ratchet it up with Morel in other towns. I mean, Christ, now you're getting a much larger revenue stream. How many billions is that gonna generate? And they're stiffing us.
Right.
Is that succinct enough?
That is very straightforward.
You know, I mean, I'm serious, with Morel, we ought to get other towns involved. Okay, you've jacked up the taxes across the board, you're cutting our piece.
Yeah,
It's awful.
I think a lot of that discussion has taken place. I mean, part of the focus especially in the last session, was to try to rein them in and reduce the impact that we were going to feel on the reduction in LGDF.
Yeah.
So that was really the focus of a lot of the efforts on multiple folks in the various COGs and along with the lobbyists.
Well, yeah, but the reality is you're still gonna lose.
Absolutely, but the reality is the debt
Wasn't
with.
bad.
Yeah, well, yeah, exactly, because they were talking at one time about 50%.
Yeah.
And then they talked about 25%.
Yeah, we should be thanking them.
Well, I don't think it's, I think it's just the reality of the debt that they got down there that
Yeah.
we're all stuck with.
Okay, great.
To the mayor's point, the Illinois Department of Revenue serves as collection distribution point for many taxes, including LGDF, sales tax, telecom tax, and use tax. Specifically to Vernon Hills, over 76% of our general fund revenue has to run through the state before it comes to the village. The remainder of the village's general fund revenue budget is comprised of locally controlled revenues such as building permits, hotel, motel taxes, and amusement taxes. That 76% does make us extremely vulnerable to changes that happen downstate. Included on this slide is reflecting a trend in state income tax, which can vary based on income tax levels. It does anticipate changes that include the 10% cut in revenues. Given the history of financial struggles at the state level, it is not anticipated that this revenue will be restored to previous levels. If the local share of income taxes received at the budgeted amount for the village's 17-18 year, the impact of the 10% reduction would amount to approximately $253,000. In addition to the reduction of LGDF, Senate Bill 42 also imposed an administrative collections fee on both home rule sales tax and telecom tax. The telecom tax administrative fee has been set at 0.5% of collections, which only amounts to about $53,000 a year. However, this revenue has been slowly declining over the last 8 years, from 1.4 million in receipts in fiscal year 2010 to a projected annual receipt of just over $1 million in the current fiscal year. This slide reflects the current status of some of the village's other main sources of revenue and estimated year-end projections. Of specific note is the home rule sales tax, which is currently trending at 2.5% to 3% less than last year and is now subject to the administrative collections fee. Electric utility taxes and amusement taxes are also trending below budget projections, which reflect an increased use of energy-efficient devices and current economic conditions. Going more into sales tax trends, this slide reflects municipal sales tax trends net of any rebates paid. This chart reflects a flat trend with small decreases in recent years. What we're seeing in the economy right now is that most communities are lucky to have a flat trend or a small percentage decrease. Now, understanding that we're only 5 months into the year, we do still have our biggest season and our most important quarter around the corner. So we will definitely be reevaluating these numbers after Christmas is over. This slide reflects data collected and reported by the state of Illinois, which shows municipal sales taxes are currently trending 3% less than last year for the first and second quarters of the calendar year. This slide shows by category where the largest decreases are occurring. And these figures are shown prior to the administrative collections fee imposed by the state. So unfortunately, that does compound. Oh, I'm sorry, that's home rule sales tax. However, it's important to note these figures do not include current upcoming holiday season. The next slide does show the same trends with home rule sales tax, which are similarly trending between 2.5% to 3% less than last year. These figures are shown prior to the administrative collections fee, so that unfortunately compounds the declining trend in the village's receipts. In summary, it's anticipated that the effects of recent changes made by the state and declining trends in revenue could impact the village's annual revenue by approximately $570,000. This trend is definitely going to be one that we monitor going forward, but it is too early to tell the full impact of these changes. In the meantime, staff has identified several areas of potential savings in the current year's budget to offset the impact of revenue declines, and will continue to look for opportunities to save going forward. As the budget process continues, we will come back to the board with additional discussions on capital projects, additional sources of revenue, and refinement of our revenue projections as we wrap up the holiday season, and hear more about the state legislature and potential changes that could be coming down the line next year. Although we will be challenged going forward to fund capital projects and operations, we are fortunate that we do have additional revenue tools in our toolbox to consider to help offset expenditures going forward. And Dave presented a wonderful plan going forward, and as presented financially, we will need to talk about alternate sources of revenue in order to fund those things going forward. And I'm happy to answer any questions at this time.
No, thank you. It was a sobering presentation.
Nice job.
Thank you.
Very good.
Yep. You know,
Actually made
okay,
the numbers easy.
Oh, thank you.
is there a motion to adjourn committee of the whole?
So made.
Second.
Motion is second. Roll call, please.
Trustees Cook,
Cook.
Aye.
Oppenheim.
Aye.
Takaoka.
Aye.
Hebda.
Aye.
Schultz.
Aye.
Markworth.
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you and good night. In the next
up.
meeting, did I already say that? Oh, I got that. Thank God you put the sticky note in front of me.
Always good to have that.
And I got to talk to Patrick on this